What is that?
I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama. Who's Deepak Chopra?
I'll find my holes again. You'll see. And having it. Oh, okay. So you haven't, and you're projecting.
Yeah.
Scorpions. Welcome back to
Buckle up, baby.
episode
18.
18.
Not the hardest, but it's up there.
Yeah, we're having some technical issues today. That's okay. 18 is a holy number in our tradition, Michael.
Yeah. You want to go down that road again?
Yeah, why not? I don't know. It is an
It's
interesting.
the numeric value of life
In Hebrew?
in Hebrew.
Chai.
Chai.
Do you buy all that stuff?
I buy it. I can explain it quickly. in
The
my
connection of
understanding
numbers,
it,
of
yeah.
numbers to.
Well, in Jewish thought, the Hebrew, it said God, and God said, "Let there be light," and then there was light in Hebrew. So when God says something, the thing is the thing. The word is the thing. He said, "Let there be." He said, "Let there be light,"
Mhm.
and then there was light. So the word actually is light. It's kind of this esoteric idea.
That in order for something to come into being, it starts with the word,
Yeah.
the concept,
Exactly.
the idea, manifest into.
Yeah. No, that's well said. So the numeric value. So the way we read it on paper is one way to see the word. Another way to see it is numerically and mathematically. So I favor like narrative and words and letters. But if you favor numbers, the numbers should also equal the thing in a certain way too.
We've officially become a televangelist
Yeah.
podcast.
God
This
is
is Joel
good,
Osteen
people.
talking. Joel Osteen, have these numbers in your laugh, Michael? What's with that guy and his face?
Yeah, I don't understand how
Tell me.
anyone watches. I mean, I guess I have my own things, but how someone could watch a televangelist and not see right through it.
Well, so Joel Osteen gets up in the morning. He goes to the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so do you think he's like the Word of God? What is that? What's going on?
There's a movie you can watch now called The Eyes of Tammy Faye on HBO.
The Ides of Tammy Faye?
The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Who's
and
that?
It's the wife of the first or the second televangelist.
Uh-huh. And what ended up happening with that person? Who's the televangelist? Famous guy like
Robert Patterson, maybe? Is
Yeah,
that a person?
our Pats. Yeah.
Yeah.
The original. Not
So there. Who's the other big one?
Oh, there's so
the guy who just had like
there's
a gay
John
affair.
Hagee. There's
No, the political.
I know. Fowley,
Yeah.
son, Jerry Falwell's son.
Falwell, yeah, Falwell.
Falwell was a big one, and
I
then
think he was in the movie. He was the first, and Robert's the second.
he had a son, and that son ran Liberty University. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's Falwell. And
Jerry Falwell.
Jerry Falwell's son, I believe. I forget his first name. But he ran Liberty University, the premier Christian university. And it came out a couple of years ago that his wife was having him watch her fuck the pool boy.
Yeah.
So
Very
very
good guy.
very pious indeed.
Yeah.
Which is just, is there...
It also makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
It does. Because, I mean, can you be virtuous and pious and celebrity? Can you?
I don't think so.
No? Maybe you can. I don't know. You have to be like a really uniquely crazy individual in a sense. I mean, it comes with crazy in some way.
When I'm meeting...
Meaning if he's that pure, if Joel Osteen is pure, that's creepy too. You're just like,
Right.
what? Like you're lecturing for arenas of 30,000 people and you go home and you're like, that was a great sermon, darling.
Yeah,
I really felt Jesus there. Good night. She probably just like, I want you to bang me doggy style, you animal. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like if he's not normal or whatever, it's not normal to be that cool about it.
Right.
You have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've seen funny videos of him, like there's some funny videos of people interviewing Joel Osteen and then like, trolling him.
Yeah, I saw a troll one a couple days ago. It was funny. He's coming on the show next week.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're going to have Pastor Joel Osteen on. Buckle up. It's going to be very exciting.
Sunday morning. He's skipping church for the first time.
On the spirituality point of number. Once upon a time I would have said, there's no evidence for any of that gobbledygook. I would have been very dry about it.
But
I took mushrooms yesterday. No, but remember what I said about seeing Jordan Peterson's lecture and having it. What, you've been working me all this time? Once upon a time, I was in this place. I veered away from this place. You know, a few psychotic breaks or two will do that to you.
Mm-hmm. On the next, on a very special buckle up.
But I will say that presented in such a way that is almost not evidence-based, but observationally based.
Yeah.
What Jordan Peterson does in a lot of his lecture series, based on what I've seen and what I've seen online and what I've seen now in person, is taking the breadth of human knowledge and experience and crystallizing that into a certain message to at least point out that there is something to be noticed here in the realm of beyond hyper-rationalistic viewpoints of the world and perspectives of the world and materialistic views of the world. You know, for a long time, intelligentsia was just dominated by this cut and dry, hyper-rationalist approach of whatever doesn't work in the scientific method and is whatever is not discovered outside the scientific method is invalid or not true. So Jordan Peterson's interpretation of true is more of an all-encompassing truth of the human experience. What have we noticed? What have we experienced? What kind of patterns have emerged? What kind of patterns are consistent in human experience and perception that are worth noting? And this connection between the heavens and the earth, the connection between the word as in a concept and the manifestation of that into actions, these are all things worth talking about and exploring, even if we can't always articulate them in the most concrete way.
It's Eastern versus Western, right? He incorporates the Eastern into Western thought.
Yeah, and not in the same way that's, you know, like these gurus do who go out, like, you know, and start talking and still these...
Maybe he is one of these guys. Maybe he is a sort of guru.
I'm referring to the people like, what's his name? When, you know, like Deepak Chopra and stuff, who are like, consciousness is not derived from experience, but experience derived from consciousness. And you're like, what? So people nod along, but I think in Jordan Peterson's case, I give him a little more credit because there are cases he makes where it's a little less nodding along and more like, oh, wow, I never actually thought about it that way.
If I had to guess, I would say someone sitting in a crowd for Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle is the exact same as you sitting in Jordan Peterson. I think you guys are all getting the same things from just different people. And probably Joel Osteen's audience. I don't think it's as different as you think.
It might be having the same emotional effect on us. But I think what makes Jordan Peterson so appealing is he's taking this untapped domain, or a domain that's been neglected by intellectuals up until his point in the modern day or in the postmodern day that we're in, and actually articulating it in ways that make them intellectually credible in the conversation, as opposed to, you know, the Deepak Chopras and these other people who are all good to fill arenas and make people feel good about themselves, but they don't have the respect of the intelligentsia. But Jordan Peterson does.
But he's taking Deepak Chopra's Eastern Buddhist thought probably in a lot of ways.
In some ways, but a lot of his stuff actually comes from Western theology and Western tradition and the Greek mythology and things like that.
The synthesis of it probably comes from Eastern.
I would say that the Eastern, at least the way it's presented, is not as synthesized. That's the point. What Jordan Peterson is able to do in his gift in articulating it is that he's synthesizing things in a way that make him formidable on the stage next to a Sam Harris, where it doesn't look like a joke.
I wonder who
where he's going into the domain with a deep with actual understandings of these things in a deep way, where when you watch them debate, it's not like the people who love Deepak Chopra are just going to love Deepak Chopra and the people who love Sam Harris are going to love Sam Harris. It's a little more of a dialogue. Like they actually are having questions for each other that are valid. You can watch these debates where they steel man each other's arguments, and they do so really well. I think Sam Harris sits there and respects Jordan Peterson as a formidable intellectual opponent. I don't think he feels that same way for a Deepak Chopra or another guy or a rabbi who gets up there and he goes, can anybody see right through this? The gospel says so. So like Jordan Peterson will never say, well, you know, that's because the gospel says so. It's right there. You know, he never just says that.
Right.
Where you have like preachers and pastors who get up there who clearly have such a biased agenda. Well, they want people to be Christian.
I wonder if Deepak Chopra is just getting more straight to the point than, like, why does Jordan Peterson have to go through the intellect to get to the spiritual? Why don't you just go straight to the spiritual?
Because, I don't know, I think when you watch Deepak Chopra, you're hearing a lot of word salad.
Well, you are.
Yeah, and a lot of people. And I think the reason he doesn't get the respect is because if you make up a bunch of fancy terms, I'm not even necessarily criticizing him, but I guess I am. You know, because the quantum mechanical realm of the quantum mechanical physiological state.
You don't know, you don't know anything he says.
Yeah, well, Deepak?
Have you ever listened to a Deepak Chopra's lecture?
Yeah, I watched him debate. But when he
Oh,
was
really?
when he was relevant, I used to watch him
Oh.
versus. I'm just saying.
I've
there-
never really heard him speak.
Oh, okay. So you haven't, and you're projecting.
Yeah.
Scorpions. No, I have. I've watched, and it's often embarrassing, to be honest. And I have rabbis who are like repping for Judaism get up there, and you see Shmuley Bateach debating Christopher
That's
Hitchens.
embarrassing. It's
embarrassing.
Not a good.
But Jordan Peterson
debate.
isn't.
Right.
You're watching something fruitful, and you're like, this is really interesting. These are interesting ideas. This interpretation and way to present Genesis is not something that you have to sort of take with like a, look, I know it's just a nice story, but just let me live with this because this is my faith kind of thing. You don't have to make excuses for it. Right. He's actually deriving depth and meaning and something worth talking about out of these biblical stories in ways that the other people are really just trying to evangelize a faith. Jordan Peterson's isn't out there trying to get people to become Christian. So you're not suspect of that. He's not really evangelizing in that way.
I just think he's better at what a lot of these guys do than they are, but they're all talking about. I think Jordan Peterson and a Hasidic Rebbe, not a Hasidic Rebbe, but Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Sacks probably are talking about the same thing.
Well, that's why I always loved Jonathan Sacks.
Right.
Oh, that was a big loss. A huge intellectual giant in...
Rest in power. Yeah, that was bad.
That was bad. Because Jonathan Sacks, I felt, got up there and at least had a very honest intellectual presentation of what he found to be meaningful here. And I didn't get an evangelizing perspective from Jonathan Sacks. He says, he had a lot of fancy lines and that were persuasive and nice and... And I get that, but I felt like he commanded, as a theologian, more respect from his opponents than someone out there with a very weak, very clear bias and agenda, you know.
So me personally, the intellectual arguments do nothing for anyway. So I rather a Deepak Chopra than a Jonathan Sacks.
You say that, but listen to Deepak Chopra. You mean that school of thought of just, I'm already bought in, now give me the goods. That's what you mean.
Yeah, because I don't think the muscle we're using isn't our brain anyway. It's something else. So why? So let's just bypass
but that's
the
not
brain.
what Deepak Chopra is doing. He's trying.
I don't know what he's doing. I'm thinking of the Dalai Lama. Who's Deepak Chopra?
We're gonna pause.
Does he wear a scarf?
Oh my God. Deepak Chopra?
I don't really know who Deepak Chopra is.
Oh, the Dalai Lama is the Buddhist Tibetan head of Buddhism.
And who is Deepak Chopra?
Deepak Chopra is like a guy who fills up arenas in Vegas talking about consciousness and quantum physiology. That
he's like a Hollywood guru.
Yeah, exactly. And he sells out places, and people go to his books. The consciousness of meaning beyond meaning. I mean, he says a lot of stuff.
Right. He's not Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra.
No, he's not the Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra. We can just call it there, Michael. Yeah, I mean, that's what the Dalai Lama speaks about. I'm not, what he's in touch with or whatnot. I don't follow that so
right.
closely.
So I would say Deepak Chopra is trying to do what Jordan Peterson's doing. It probably might not be as good at it as Jordan Peterson is. They're trying to draw on the same sources to give like some sort of popular message of understanding of the universe. Maybe Jordan Peterson's just more intellectually honest about it,
or intellectually honest and intellectually credible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think like he spoke about it in a podcast clip I saw. Where
I'm on your side. I don't like Deepak Chopra anymore.
He talked about how like when he announced his lecture series, in a lot of his case, he's just as surprised as anyone that people are drawn to this.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, he's like my first lecture series I did on the biblical stories. I did on Genesis. No. We rented out a theater. We tried to sell some tickets. 3,000 people showed up the first night, second night, third night. Everyone was interested. But this is stuff that he's been talking about for a while. He wrote his book Maps of Meaning like years ago. Right. So I don't question it really. It's been that way before he was known. I know you have like your skepticism because he's become so, well known. But if you follow the history, he wears a better suit now. But generally the messaging's been very consistent, which just shows you that
he's been working on it for decades.
And this has been his stuff about why.
Yeah. Oh no.
The meaning of meaning.
I don't really discount anything he says.
I know you were talking presentationally, like.
I think he's just not. He's not like a fully formed person. He's still developing and still changing, which is great. But I guess from my gurus, I'm looking for someone more fully formed sometimes.
No one's fully formed until you're dead.
There are people who are more fully formed than than others. Like
Tim Dillon comment when he saw him on Jordan Peterson in a tux. He's like, he looks like he's in his final form.
Yeah, he looks like a maitre d' at an Italian restaurant.
And then he started doing this Irish accent. Oh, how much can I get you? Oh, no, why don't you sit down?
No, but he got so well to the thing that bothers me. I mean, that's why Tim Dillon's the best, because he gets to it better than anyone can. But
since we're getting a little repetitive on this podcast, but I don't care.
But I had an experience that Jordan Peterson might be able to speak to the other day. We've been talking a lot of politics lately, so we're gonna take a break from that. But so yesterday, I'm starting a newsletter. Right, we had the Systems podcast, the episode.
Yes,
and I decided,
implementing daily routines and systems to start doing creative and fulfilling work.
Right. So something I want to do is write these very odd, short stories. They're very short, a few paragraphs, and like publish them. So with the systems thinking, I'm like, I'll just do it and see where that goes. So I started a weekly newsletter where I'm going to, when I write a story or use an old story that I've already written and edited, and then include with that like a little bit of a hook with a TV recommendation and a podcast recommendation, just so it feels urgent, because I feel like no one opens an email anymore that doesn't feel like newsy and urgent. It has to have like, it can't just be fun. It has to have like some sort of like, you have to
fair enough.
Get something out of it, whatever. That's my plan. So I'm taking a bit of a swing. It's like hopefully like a 5-year, 10-year project.
When did this begin?
This was a few weeks ago.
Oh.
2 or 3 weeks ago.
How's it going? Is this every day?
No, well...
How many stories are you going to release? What's the schedule?
It's once a week, but I'm going to write every day.
Yeah, and then release once a week.
I guess the best story of the week will go in the...
And you're releasing where? For the folks?
Through an email. The first channel is going to be an email. It's going to be a weekly newsletter on this cool platform I found called Beehive. And then if people like it, I'll do it more than once a week. And if someone suggested a WhatsApp message, maybe that might be a better, however people want to get it. But I'm starting with an email. But I'm really taking a swing with it in terms of like, this is something I really want to do. Something I think is important for me. So like, I'm going to really make the ask. Usually like, I'll just put it out. If people find it, great. If not. But like, I'm too embarrassed to like be like, but I'm really doing like, hey, I'm like texting people, hey, I'm doing this thing, please subscribe. Like and every email is gonna be like, if you like it, forward it to a friend, subscribe to it. Like a lot of like calls to action. Like I want this to grow, I want this to find its audience. It's not for everybody for sure, but I think there's like
Michael's brain nuggets.
Yeah, I think there's tens of thousands of people out there, maybe not more than that would appreciate it. Maybe it's not millions, but I think there's probably like 200,000 people in the whole world that might appreciate this. So over 5 years, I want to find those people. So I'm like, I'm really, really pushing it.
200,000 is like Orthodox viral, by the way. Modern Orthodox viral is 200,000.
Yeah.
Like everyone says 1 million followers. 200,000 is Orthodox viral.
There's a gap of it, but I mean, this thing I say about fish all the time: you don't need 100 million people to like you. You need 30,000 people to love you. And you can sell at Madison Garden for 10 nights in a row every summer if you want. So
the 1,000 true fans argument.
Right. So I'm looking for those people who like, when I'm like, hey, I'm self-publishing a little collection, they'll all throw $10 at me because like, why not? Like, I love this stuff. So that's my goal. And it's like a project. So part of that is like, I went on Twitter and like I spent time, crafting a tweet. And like, and it was too long. So like I went to Bitly. I don't even know if people use Bitly anymore.
To shorten the URL.
It's not even like a website anymore. It's like a consulting service. So I Googled short URL.
Yeah.
I got a thing. I got the URL. I put it in there. Finally fit. I tagged the email platform called Beehive. I put it out there on Twitter. I'm like, hey, here's a thing. I'm doing it. Please subscribe. I put it out on Twitter and I closed it. And I'm like, I'm not checking. A few hours later, I look back and the founder of the email company shared it, and my friend Joey shared it. He retweeted it, and he has a lot of followers, like a lot of engagement, and like a bunch of people liked it. And I'm like win for me, like not a lot of people, but like at least you get a little bit of something back, right?
Yeah.
And like it felt good.
Okay.
And then so then like when you have a good tweet, you just look at it a million times. Yes. So I looked at it and I clicked on the thing to like I wanted to bring me to my site, and it brought me to like shorturl.com.
Oh, no.
The link did not work at all.
Oh no.
And the worst part of it was everyone who shared it didn't even click on it.
Didn't even click the link.
Obviously.
How do you know?
Because then they probably would have said like, they wouldn't have RT'd it, and they would have like been like, hey Mike, things broken. But my friend and this
Aw.
founder, they all shared this thing, but they didn't even look at it, which was just another reminder that social media is all just like fake and stupid.
Well,
But it was so gutting.
I'm sorry to hear
It
that.
shouldn't have been so gutting, but it was so gutting.
Why didn't the link work? It just didn't work. It was the wrong.
I don't know what I did wrong, but everything looked good. Like it looked like it worked, like it was the right image and words, but it didn't actually bring you to my website.
Right.
And I felt like I was in like a Jordan Peterson desert analogy of
I
like
understand.
just at the bottom of the well.
Well, I'll offer you some consolation.
Yeah, please.
You shouldn't write. No. I've had those moments that were successful, that really did get shared, you know. And we have this notion in our minds from watching from behind the screen, you know, as we watch the theater of social media play out, that the way people make it, the way people make it is that one moment, that one threshold. Oh, did you see they got shared by Jimmy Kimmel and then they just exploded? That's not how it works. It seems that way to us that there's this moment, but it really is that there's a critical mass of so many complex factors that finally come together at a threshold where it becomes visible to you that somebody has made it. The Beatles, you know, were on the Ed Sullivan Show, right? Is that...
Yeah.
And played that thing and blew up. And everyone can say they played for 10 or 15 years before that in pubs in England. And then that was the, I guess, critical mass moment that it finally launched. But for 10, 15 years, they were just working at it. And had they not been doing that, if they got that shot on Ed Sullivan somehow and they weren't ready to play, they would have botched it. Long story short, I've had stuff retweeted by the people I was aiming at or by prominent people. And you get sometimes a boost, you get sometimes a this, but then things just move along.
Right.
And what really matters in the macro is the consistency of things. So you're going to spend all day saying, oh, this could have been the moment. This could have been it. This might have been something. If only my link had worked, it would have made a huge difference. In more likelihood than not, it would have just been a nice day. And you would have then gone back to writing.
Yeah.
And it's the people who keep going back and putting their head down and getting to work.
Yeah.
There's a phrase that I've learned like in the industry, which is, oh, shit, next. Oh, shit, next.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, shit, you know what, this one thing never works. That's why social media sucks. This, what this, and this. None of that.
Yeah.
Ah, shit, next. Anyway, okay, let's get back to writing. So in general, I know you think there was a massive missed opportunity, or you may be thinking of it that way.
No.
And I know it feels shitty.
Yeah.
But as long as the same
just
amount
went
of
into
time.
Gary Vee for a second. And I know it feels shitty.
Shoot, he's taking over. As the same amount of shitty you feel is the same amount of good you would have felt in the inverse, and it'll dissipate in as quick a time as it does.
I think you're half right. I wasn't banking on that for anything, but it was, you know, you have to take your small little wins along the way. And it felt, I mean, I thought to myself, I was like, oh, 2 people clicked on the link. That's really nice. That's really nice. And then it was, even those 2 people didn't click on the link. It was like, it was,
mean even those 2 people
like
didn't?
They
did.
My friends, no, they retweeted my tweet, but they obviously didn't click on the link.
Yeah.
Because then they would have said something, maybe. But like, it was like, I was grateful for this tiny little victory, and even that tiny little victory wasn't a thing. I think that's where the drop down came from. Of like, I was trying to be grateful, and like it.
But you got shares. People were excited about it. The founder noticed you.
Yeah,
Good.
And a couple people actually subscribed from it.
It at least proved to you that it's not worth. It's worth something is worth sharing.
Yeah.
Even if there was a technicality.
It was also cool. I'm thinking now because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this, but
I knew the story was going somewhere bad because you were like, "There's no way this just ends all PG."
Yeah.
I get why it's gutting if like you just can't catch a break. But if you look at it the flip side, you could just say, "Oh fuck, the link didn't work." But hey, the founder retweeted a tweet of mine. He saw what it was easy to get his attention, and as long as I put my head down and have the work, it'll speak for itself eventually.
Right. So I did get the founder's attention, and I guess it's interesting because I think a lot about how like I was kind of on the content creation, like 5 years too early. Like in 2007, 8, 9, I was like I was creating content when no one did it yet, and there wasn't an industry for it.
Number 3 pencil.
Number 3 pencil.
100%.
I had like a Twitter account called We Need a Word For, and like
remember that.
I'm not blaming
You were a memer before there was meming.
Yeah. No, I was really, and I was. it was cool because, like, especially I was early on Twitter, and if you were early on Twitter, it was easy to get people's attention, and then not blaming anyone but myself, but like I just sort of didn't follow through, and like then this whole industry popped up, and now I sit back and I don't think about this too often. I don't let my mind go there really, but I think like if I would have just stuck with it, I wonder what could have been. Now I'm re-engaging it and saying if I start, it's never too late in the Gary V parlance. If I start now and stick with it, it's still not too late. And it is kind of encouraging because I think I found this really cool platform that no one's using yet. And just like I did in 2008, like I was able to get the founder's attention very, very easily. So like I still got it, you know, like I still have the eye for it. And like I'll find my holes again, like the same way I used to. It'll just be a different thing. I guess that's pretty encouraging.
That's sort of like, I was just thinking about the phrase, I'll find my holes again, which feels like somebody who's going out on the dating market after a divorce. But
I think that's a Harvey Weinstein quote.
I'll find my holes again. He's taking him away to jail. I'll find my holes again. You'll see. I'll find my... What a deep, dark line. I'll find my holes again. You'll watch me shower from jail.
You think this'll stop me?
Jeez. It's amazing also, like...
Is he alive?
I was like, did he kill himself? He didn't. He's alive.
He didn't die of COVID in jail? He was
sick.
Bad.
He got sick.
He got sick, but he didn't die.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing when you perceive, like, one thing we talk about a lot, and I will say that's exactly how TikTok was for me. I was semi-early to TikTok, but I wasn't even. I remember getting on and being like, shoot, all these people got in early and got this following. They amassed people who were super early. But the most encouraging thing to me was, hey, I remember in college when I had classmates YouTubing and everyone thought it was like silly cat videos and they were doing it and they've built up massive followings. I was way late to YouTube. And now I'm coming up to like 14,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's not too late. I started late. But then Instagram, I'm like, look at these people, these creators who've created these followings. And I'm like just using it to post like just nothing. I'm not using it as a tool. Missed the boat on that, but I didn't. It's just like I got onto it. But then TikTok, I'm semi-early on. Right. It wasn't a household name yet, and I got in on it. And the next thing I'll just be aware of what's out there. And the only thing that I can control is me and my creative output through it all. And then it lands where it lands. But the important thing is that I'm the engine driving the creativity out into the world. The sketches, the bits, the jokes, the podcasts, the music. Everything is just coming out from me. And I have to just put out that consistent creative hustle of doing it. The grind is really exhausting, and it's peaks and valleys, and you have good days and you have bad days. But it's like having good workouts and bad workouts. Some days you really just don't want to work out, and you could take a day off. You could take some breaks, but it's about maintaining the fitness of your creativity.
Right. And I think I see Web3 the same way I saw Web2. Web2 is social media. Web3 is whatever this crypto thing is. But I'm seeing it in the same way of like, I think in 5 years, there'll be some really powerful cool tools and really interesting things. And like, I just want to get my stuff in order. Yeah. So when the opportunity arises, maybe I have 10,000 subscribers and like, I'll be able to do some kind of NFT thing. I don't even know what it is yet.
And you start to see like, as you do it more, like I think because we're doing this podcast, you probably started applying yourself to the other things. It's like, once you start building up these little muscle fibers for consistency of output, it starts to spill over and you start to do consistent writing and then you start to do consistent other things. And you start to just, and I'll make the analogy again at the risk of just sounding repetitive. It's like when you're physically fit, you're not just physically fit, you can do a lot of things. If you go to the gym every day and are putting in the time and the grind and doing it, if you're creatively fit, you can do a lot of things because it doesn't phase you to say, yeah, well, I'll just post on this now every day or start to filter to this. If you look at it from like when you're just starting out, remember you were like, oh my God, what? YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, content once a week, long form video, high res video, short form video, low res. It's all like, what? Because that's like looking at an American Ninja Warrior course or a Tough Mudder course and being completely out of shape. Yeah. You got to get in shape.
You know what it was for me? I think like on episode 2 or something, you texted me at like 10:30. I was literally in bed and you were like something needs to be done. And where I was, my muscle memory was like, it's past 10. I'll deal with it tomorrow. But the thought occurred to me. I was like, if I was 25, I would 1000% get out of bed and do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I've stopped doing that. I've stopped like, I don't know if you call that working hard or hustle or whatever it is, but like, I was like, I have my like weird boundaries that I've set in my 30s. And I'm like, I have to like be better than this. So I got out of bed and I did the thing. And like that muscle of like, even though you're in bed, get out and do the work that has to be done.
David Goggins.
Yeah, I guess so.
But you know, there's also a balance to that.
Important.
There's a balance to that too, because then it's like, no, like get your rest.
I mean, I didn't. You also texted me at 11:30 last night, and I knew the podcast hadn't gone up yet, and I was like, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Like, no, for sure, there's boundaries, but in the space that you can work in, like pushing myself, like the newsletter is definitely a product of that. Of like, there's something I can be doing, so I should do it.
But again, it's like if you've done 100 workouts, it's okay to take that day off that you don't want to do it and rest, as opposed to the first 10. Can't take a day off in those first 10, otherwise you'll stop forever.
Well, I mean, that's like the whole.
You don't want to disrupt the habit building process. That's huge, because that's like putting in the foundation of what you're about to do in any creative endeavor.
Right.
And if you slack on that, because it was our episode 2, that's why I was like, get out of bed and do this.
Yeah. You didn't say that. I don't want to give you credit for that.
I totally did. No, but we did have honest conversations in the beginning when I was sensing a little bit of like, well, I only give it 2 hours and we got to. When I was sensing like, you know, how to gauge this, it was like, well, in the beginning, we're building the habit. So we really shouldn't have hesitation on whatever hiccups or things get in the way. That's the painful part to get through. It's like learning an instrument or any new skill. It's going to hurt. So the second it's uncomfortable, I was trying to push through that discomfort. You know?
You went on vacation, or you went away.
And you were being a pussy.
You went away in the first 10, and we recorded 2 in a week, I think, because we were like, we have to get just the first 10 out, because it's like, then you went away in this back 10 and we skipped a week, which is like, you know, we're like, it's okay to skip it now.
Yeah, it was,
like,
and it didn't affect
10.
anything. Here we are at episode 18, just we picked it up. Right. And we did, I think, 2 last week or something like that, back to back.
Yeah.
So it didn't trip it up, because I think it's harder to undo the habit once it's there. I mean, it would take time. Just like it's harder when you're in shape. You could have a bad cheat meal and it won't do damage. But in those first 10 days, if you're trying to diet, I'm going to talk everything we say for the next 20 minutes. I will revert back to fitness.
It's exciting too. I think with the Rogan N-word Spotify drama, misinformation, it also made clear a little bit to me what we're doing here, really, which is like we're talking, we're getting better at this. We have this sort of space carved out, and like when all the stars align, we're here. Like I mean, we probably saw more engagement with the Rogan stuff over the last few days. Probably more just because it's a really interesting topic that we were already talking about. So we were very poised to like jump in. And like I mean, like you saw with Tim Dillon. I mean, I don't think his Patreon was so huge until COVID, and like he was so poised and ready to be talking about COVID, because it was a combination of all the elements he already spoke so brilliantly about. Like, whenever that thing happens, it might never happen, it might be in 15 years, but like that's why you do it. You're here, and like you're ready for it when it comes, and like that's when the pops happen.
But on the Rogan thing, I'm just kidding. That is the whole case for systems versus goals. You do these systems so that when the opportunities finally arise, you are poised and ready, and you have a whole treasure trove of content ready to receive or react to things going on.
Right.
You're fully creatively in shape to take on those things.
I even saw now, like we when we get a lot of likes, they translate now better into followers, I think, because people are liking it, coming to the page and seeing we have a lot of stuff, and they're like, oh, I'll follow this, as opposed to before they'd like it, come to the page and be like,
right.
Maybe. It's a theory.
Do you feel early to the podcast space, middle, or totally late? I see them all over the place in a way.
I feel very, very late in terms of what like Rogan and Tim Ferriss are doing. I think unless you can have consistent celebrities on your podcast, you're never going anywhere. In terms of the 2 white guys talking and joking around with each other, I think we're right on time.
White guys.
Yeah, I mean the guys that you've shown.
Oh, right on time.
Yeah, like 2 silly dudes. I don't know, maybe they're white, maybe they're not. 2 silly dudes having conversations. That's like a whole.
Michael, first of all, it's
market.
pronounced white.
White, sorry. White dude.
Yeah, in a way, I feel like we're in a wave of this happening. A renaissance.
Yeah. Well,
I was just gonna say that. What's interesting is, I'm seeing them everywhere pop up, but I'm excited to be kind of a part of it. I feel like you're in the moment of when this is becoming a thing to do, as opposed to, you're starting. Everyone has done. Like, it's not fully accepted yet across the board that the new media is sort of podcasting independent entertainers with their independent niche audiences. Did you see that debate between Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan? Not controversial. They were talking about entertainment. And
the end.
He was like, Joe, you're such a boomer. You're such a. He's like, do you have any? Oh, he's like, do you own any digital real estate? He's like, what? Do you own any digital real estate? He's obviously trolling him.
I think that's your best Tim Dillon yet.
Do you own any digital real estate?
Yeah.
He's like, what are you? You're such a boomer. You should get a place in the metaverse where no one has to take the vaccine. Did you see that clip? But then they were talking about how comics. I think they were talking about, I could be wrong, but it was about what comics should do now, up and coming comics. He's like, they're not going to make it doing open mics at clubs. What they should be doing is focusing on, their own shows. And Joe Rogan's like, why? Because he's respecting the craft. And Tim Dillon's not disrespecting the craft, but he's acknowledging, why would anybody go on late night to do a set? Why would they go on those shows?
Why is that a goal?
He's like, I get it that, Jimmy Kimmel has some certain ratings, but he's not Mr. Beast. He's not Rambo. And Joe Rogan's like, who's Rambo? He's like, you're such a boomer. He's a Minecraft. He's a Minecraft superstar, Joe. You don't know these things. Do you own any digital real estate? No, but he's like, he's not Rambo. I could quote Tim Dillon crap all day long. Did you see the picture of the old lady with the gun?
No.
I'm sorry. I have to bring it up. Half this podcast is us just regurgitating Tim Dillon, and it's super fun for us to do it. But there was another clip that came across my feed, and it's a picture from the Ukraine. And he's like, okay, wait, what is this? What is this? And he's like mellow Tim Dillon. What is this one? What is this one? And like, this is a lady in Ukraine. She's like 85 years old, being trained by some like militia. And she looks like 92. She's holding it. And he goes, yeah, my money's on Russia. Yeah, I'm going to put my money on Russia. But anyway, he was making the point to Joe about the new space we're in. And it's nice to kind of be in it, at least participating in it in some way. Who knows where it'll go? I like that we're we're in the space.
There's a whole take economy that I wasn't aware of.
What do you mean by take?
Like, where podcasts, what Joe Rogan does, 4-hour long form conversations. I don't know if we're ever gonna. I don't know if our full episode is ever gonna go anywhere. But our reels, using our podcast to chop it up into smaller content for like takes on hot issues. Like, people are actively searching for that. Like, you can't get enough good takes on any particular issue. So like, us being in that economy, I don't think there's like. It's not like saturated yet of like an interesting take on a topic being fed to somebody really quickly.
Even the fact that YouTube Shorts says beta on it.
Yeah.
Like, when I say YouTube Shorts, people go, what is that? I like that because I'm in it and I'm putting our stuff up there. I don't know where it's going to lead, but we're in the preview part of some of these aspects of this content.
Yeah.
But I will say, you strike me sometimes as being very much lured by the cachet of, well, you need to have celebrities on to do this, and you need to have something on to do that. And I'm curious as to why that is.
Well, I think
you have these like rules constructed in your head sometimes. Well, I notice where you're like, if you don't have this and this, you're not, or like this need to be credentialed or qualified.
No, I watch. I'm watching what's successful, and over the last few years, Dak Shepard's podcast is a great example.
Yeah, tell me.
Dak Shepard launched the podcast. It is not special. He's cool, and like I like him, and like he's like a recovering addict, and so he has like a little bit of like an interesting take. He's just like, he's a good conversationalist among thousands. Yeah, that's good. Among thousands.
I wasn't doing him. I was doing
that
me.
looks like him. Among thousands of
he looks like Zach Braff, like an evil brother of Zach Braff,
like a cool camp counselor of Zach Braff.
like it looks like a sitcom. Zach Braff went into the cool badass machine and came out as Dak Shepard.
Yeah.
They're the same in my head.
But I watched him premiere at #1, and then because he's like an, I don't know, B-list celebrity, maybe A-list, or he's married to an A-list, certainly, celebrity. Like he just books celebrity after celebrity, and that's the formula for getting into the top 10 podcasts. And I don't think there are so many interview shows. You need a draw, unless you do it for.
You're confusing one thing.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
You ready?
Yeah.
He didn't start in podcasting and make it solely on podcasting. So his advancement in what you're seeing is on the heels of a career where he already did make a name for himself and formed a lot of connections and contacts.
It's the same idea. It's the same reason that movies are only based on IP. Like you have to go into an interview podcast with IP. IP may be your own celebrity or booking celebrities.
Well,
But you need something so wide-rangingly popular already and well-known for people to discover you, I think. I don't think there's a way to
but
get
the only
discovered.
reason somebody like him is the more easily discoverable than unknowns is because he was already known.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So either you're already known
but
or
how do
your
you
guest
get
is already known.
But there are people who get known solely on their podcasts.
Name one that has done it in the last 2 or 3 years.
This American Life?
No, I'm talking about an interview show. I'm talking about long-form interviews. Tim Dillon does not do long-form interviews.
This American Life?
That's
name
not,
a long-form interview show that made it solely on its own.
Yeah,
with it?
on its own merit of like interesting person interviewing interesting people.
Oh.
Name one that wasn't part of the New York Times network or NPR's network.
I mean, what about the success
or
of
the
a lot of
Ringers?
these big podcasts that became big because of the podcast?
I'm talking about in the last even 4 to 5 years.
Like H3's podcast has a huge podcast.
What's H3?
Yes, they're not. I mean,
They're not huge.
The thing about podcasts is, I didn't even know about his podcast though, Dak Shepard's podcast, till you brought it up to me.
It's a big deal. I think he got a $20 million deal or a $10 million deal with Spotify, like an exclusive.
But you
deal.
could also argue like Joe Rogan's podcast propelled him so much, and he wasn't so known.
I'm saying that you can't do it now. Joe Rogan did it. I'm saying if you start an interview podcast,
so
now,
like
it's
in the
not part of
modern
big
in the
network.
modern manifestation of what podcasts are,
Yeah.
which guy made it because he started a hit podcast and was unknown before?
in the last 4 to 5 years, and I'm not and a network being part of like Barstool Network is the same thing as celebrities. I'm just talking about like you're part of this known entity already.
Right.
Either being a celebrity or interviewing celebrities.
Does
But
Michaela Peterson's podcast count, or she had her dad's cachet to kind of cash to
she's
use?
Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Okay, well, I'm getting closer. If you dig,
All this is to say that what we're doing is not that. Like two guys talking.
no, we're doing
is
what
different
we're
than
doing.
an
We're
interview
indie
podcast.
artists in a
Yeah.
sense.
So
yeah.
I'm saying I don't think what we're doing is quite saturated yet.
Oh, okay.
But like, if someone was like, "Mike, you're trying to become the next Rogan," I'd be like, "No, that's silly."
No, I definitely actually think it is, but because everyone's unknown, nobody knows. There's a lot of people trying. There's a lot of people out there throwing a SM7 mic in front of their face and going hot takes. It's
That's
happening
fair.
everywhere.
That's
I
fair.
see it popping up.
Yeah.
It's yet to be determined who comes strictly from that world. If I rack my brain enough, I'm sure I could find people who I follow who have a great big podcast now. But maybe they just haven't. Maybe it's so new a space that they haven't become as successful as they will become.
That makes
Meaning the
sense.
people I'm watching now, it's that there's a lot of people, and some of them are building followings.
Right.
And maybe eventually they'll be much more even mainstream. The way like Tim Dillon is mainstream, is becoming more of a known name to everyone, but he's still sort of underground.
There's nothing in the top 20 podcasts probably with two people talking
That didn't
to each
have
other.
something beforehand.
No, even so, probably there's probably even if they had something before, and I doubt there's in the top 20 like something outside of either like a narrative show or an interview show.
In the top 20
I would be surprised if there's like a conversation show
Mm-hmm.
between two hosts in the top 20 podcasts.
Charlie Rose.
That's interviews.
I mean, that's old school too.
He's not doing a podcast, is he?
Charlie Rose is done.
He's
He
done,
was
yeah.
like naked in front of people and got accused. He was canceled. He was one
Yeah.
of them. He got axed.
He got
He
axed.
got disappeared in our.
No second act for Charlie Rose.
I guess not. I was gonna say, isn't it interesting these like fall from grace? Because you perceive sometimes this world of celebrity as this. I think sometimes the curtain is up, and you like watching it as theater. And even though you know better, sometimes there are times where you fall into the whole. There's this other world of like.
Yeah, I don't like to think of them as humans.
You don't like to, but in reality, and I don't say this with too much authority, but a little bit, having been adjacent to some of it, working with producers who worked with big names and hit, like, the people connected to the hits.
Right.
I wouldn't say I've been in the room with Bruno Mars. I mean, actually, I have been in the room with Bruno Mars, but that was a whole other story. We wrote some songs together. You ever heard of Grenade? No, but when he was, I was an intern at a studio. Quick anecdote. I was an intern at a studio, one of my first jobs, recording and setting up recording sessions and things like that. There's like, they told me they would record these, they would use the space to record these sessions for promo and PR. And the head of the studio, one of the engineers was like, okay, so Bruno Mars is coming in today. I'm like, okay, I don't know who that is. I had to look him up. There was a time when you had
What
to
was
look.
that, like 06? No, no,
It was
no.
09.
Oh,
It was 2010.
Yeah.
It was 2010. And I'm like, Bruno Mars. And I look it up. Who's that guy? And I'm like, oh, beautiful girls all over the world. He was just a featured guy on certain songs.
Yeah.
I want to be a billionaire.
Right, he sang
so
the chorus.
Freaking bad.
Yeah.
He was doing hooks. And he wrote the songs, but I didn't know who he was. I'm like, oh, Bruno Mars. Okay.
He wrote those songs?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. And he's written One Day, Montes Yahoo.
No way.
Yeah. Bruno Mars.
Montes Yahoo didn't write that?
No.
Oh, that's so disappointing.
Maybe some of it, but Bruno Mars is at least a co-writer or writer. Bruno Mars has written so many hits.
Can I ask you? I know this is the exact type of question you hate. How much do you think someone makes off writing one day? Is it like $10 million? Is it $1 million?
It's not $10 million, I don't
I'm
think.
saying lifetime, like the value of that.
You don't
song
just
to the
call it
writer.
quits after writing one
No,
day.
I'm not saying that, but like, for an idea of how much Bruno Mars makes, like off of a hit song, like
Yeah.
one day, what does that bring a writer?
Oh, it's an interesting question in today's songwriting market because, oftentimes the way it's structured is like writers who have publishing deals
Mm-hmm.
will get a big advance up front. Here's a lot of money so that you can now be free to and to go and write songs with different people. You don't get to that after a little bit, but publishing advances can be quite significant after you've written a hit song. So it's like proof of concept. This guy's a great writer. So you get money in that way, and then you get a lot of back end money from the use of songs. And I don't know, the use of songs in any kind of royalties that generate on the back end. Any licenses of that song one day used for the Olympics. They're the labels who own the master recording of that song and the publishers are negotiating to. Our friend would be very happy with where this podcast is going, by the way. So publishers, labels, the label owns the recording of the song. The publisher owns the actual song, and Bruno Mars is partially a publisher. That's a whole separate conversation.
Okay.
But there's two copyrights for a song.
Mm-hmm.
There's the recording,
Yeah.
and then there's the song.
So when somebody,
The song is the lyrics and the like someone, if I did a cover song of One Day and recorded it, the label wouldn't own that, but Bruno Mars and the publisher would.
they own the song of it.
The
So
song,
if someone,
the intellectual property
when
that is
someone
the
buys
song.
their masters, they're buying the original
Recordings,
recording.
just the
Interesting.
recording. So if somebody sells their masters, labels are generally in the business of owning master recordings of songs, and publishers own the actual song.
So then when the Olympics goes on and One Day plays, the recording and the song itself both have to get paid.
Sure, it's called the sides. They say
sides.
paying the master side and the publishing side.
Cool.
Now you'll get, if they negotiate, $200,000 to use the song, Bruno Mars will get paid on that licensing fee, and his publisher will get paid. They split it, the writer share and the publisher share, and the label will negotiate a master sync fee to use that song. So that's one stream, but then it gets played on the radio, and you're making public performance royalties. A radio play is considered a public performance. Performance is
A radio station pays every time they play a song?
yeah,
didn't
you
know
get
that.
you get public performance royalties on that. I believe it can be complicated because if you're unknown, sometimes you're paying for radio campaigns to play your songs. But at the end of the day, you're getting back end on. But with streaming and everything, you're getting a little bit of that, not a ton. But in today's and it used to be the biggest thing was mechanical royalties, which were the sale of the record. You wrote a hit song back in the day and it sold a ton of records. You're getting paid every time the record gets sold. 9.1 cents every time a record gets sold was generally 9.1 cents per record. It was a shitty rate, but that's what you would get on a mechanical royalty of a record. But we're not selling records anymore.
Right.
So for strictly the songwriter, they're in a bit of a amorphous place with how they should be compensated because you're getting a bunch of that. You're getting a bunch of revenue from back end royalties and streams and licenses and stuff like that. But people aren't selling records in the same way. So it's hard to quantify from one hit song how much. It's a hard question to answer.
I guess can you give me, is it closer to 50 million or 1 million?
If I'm ballparking,
Yeah.
one.
Okay. All right. There you have it.
Not 50. That's just an educated guess.
All right.
$50 million from one
I don't know how
hit
much
song.
is like celebrate good times. Come on. That's,
over
that's
the
not
course of
worth
a
it,
career, I hear you, but what he's really getting is, holy shit, who wrote that song? What a hit song. All right, I'm going to put him in the room with every single...
I'm not interested in that. I want to know at what point...
You can call it. I get it. It's not a lottery, Michael. It just
I'm joking,
isn't a
I'm joking,
lottery.
I'm joking.
But a hit
But I'm
song can
curious
do
about
a
that.
ton
I'm
for
curious
you.
about that.
It can give you a hit song is like anything. Somebody says, wow, publishers come up to you and say, hey, I'm going to offer you an advance. I'm going to renegotiate your publishing events. I want to give you, a couple $1 million or a couple $100,000 to sign with me exclusively as one of my artists. And I'll put you in the room with all these different people and we can generate hit songs. Because hit songs drive traffic to concerts. Hit songs do everything. It's all pop songwriting is all the hit songs that fill the arenas. It's all, one day, everybody singing like that's the value. So it's a question of where it lands.
I'm curious about it in the sense of like Bruno Mars.
But one hit wonders. They didn't just retire on that.
But Bruno Mars walks into a room and I think of him as like a great, maybe even like iconic artist. I don't necessarily think of him as like a very, very, very wealthy man. Like in the same way, like does like when he walks into the room, does he have $100 million? Or I'm just curious, like how rich is Bruno Mars? Like, or like I guess we think of like Jay-Z as like what do you call that? Like a maven, not a maven,
a mogul.
But like it's interesting to think of these artists as also very powerful, wealthy people. I don't know why that's interesting to me.
I think I can explain it to you.
Yeah,
because
in the same way a finance person.
Yes, I think in finance, you perceive them and money as one and the same. They're in the business of money. All they do is everything they do is transactional.
Yeah.
In a sense. And artists and actors, they're all wealthy too, but you don't ascribe power to them for whatever reason.
George Clooney, I think, is a billionaire.
Right. And I'm sure they have tons of business going on too, and they're all wealthy, but it's very easy for you to know why. When you see an artist, you're like, yeah, Bruno Mars is wealthy. I don't even think about it because it's so obvious to me why he's wealthy. You can attach his wealth as earned and accepted because what he's giving is so out in front. Finance people, investors, businesses, entrepreneurs, they're creating things and providing value in ways that are much more complex to understand conceptually than an actor's amazing performance. Bravo, he deserves all the money in the world. The value given and the value received is very obvious and easy to comprehend. From a third party observer, you're observing Bruno Mars write a hit song. You like the song, and then his arena gets filled with people.
I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it for me.
So why don't you describe? Why isn't Bruno Mars powerful, even though he might have as much money as a finance guy?
I listen to
because I don't even agree with your assessment that money equals power in the way that you do.
I listened to an interview with Rob Dyrdek, who's the guy who had Fantasy Factory on MTV, and he has it's like this Tosh Point .0 type of show on MTV. He was explaining that 60% of MTV's airtime is filled with Rob Dyrdek content, which is first of all wild. Okay. But he was talking about it from the perspective of he was like he came up as a skateboarder, and like he was very, very rich in his like 20s and 30s because he was just crazy and like had all these shows and deals and whatever. But he said like I think around the time he turned 40. He realized he was sort of like young rich almost. Like he had a few $1 million, but like he sort of started looking around and realized like there's like me rich and then there's like generational wealth, 50, 100, $500 million people. And like he just spoke very interestingly for like an hour about like wanting very badly to get into these rooms and into sort of this club of people with that much wealth. It was just an interesting podcast to listen to, but so it's interesting for me to think about people that are on that level. And it's just, I don't know. I'm just thinking about that lately.
We talk about this in the band all the time.
Yeah.
We apply sort of the success that we've had and the endeavors we've had at the level that we've had it. And there was a time when I said, man, if only I had a song on TV, I'd be set. Man, like, oh, these guys, they have these songs in the commercials and the movies. Like, you see those songs, you romanticize it and pedestal it as some lofty goal. And I don't take anything away from the fact that I've achieved that. And I've had stuff in that vein, and I know how it's perceived because I once perceived it that way, right? Like, you sort of put everything into this category of the dream. But then once you get there, you just realize that you're at the top of the hill, the bottom of a mountain. And if you apply that same thing up the scale, I guarantee you, Bruno Mars doesn't go, I fucking made it. I don't think he does. I know it's hard to imagine.
No, I'm not even.
Even though he's
I'm not
playing,
even thinking
even though he's
about it
playing the
that way.
Super Bowl.
I'm not really thinking about it that way though.
No, but the way you just described this whole perception of I want to get in the room with that level. I want to, and I'm sure there are moments like that where you're with people, but we're perceiving the world. You're
Yeah.
presenting a world in which there are these like castes and hierarchies to get through, and then once you're there, it's a whole different thing. And my experience has been, it's actually once you get there, you're like, oh, I'm coming behind the curtains and the flash and the Rolexes, and I realize it's a lot of just really hardworking people keeping their head down and doing everything they can, and a lot of talent and skill, but a lot of admirable hard work and crazy amounts of work ethic and skill and applying yourself in that way. It's much more of that, and much more of, you know, it's much less of a arrived at paradise dynamic and setup than as opposed to, you know what, it's just a constant hike up the hill, hike up the mountain.
It's interesting, I guess, because having,
is that not what you were saying?
No, I don't think that's what I appreciate that part of it. I think maybe what I'm trying to say is having a few $1 million is like awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Having $100 million is a responsibility. And like it's curious to me to think about Bruno Mars managing that much wealth. It's interesting to me to think about. I don't know that part of his life. Like, how does Bruno Mars manage that much wealth?
But when we're in this space now of like follow your dreams porn online of all these media types and wealth is become pop culture. Like the glamorization and the like proliferation of wealth content and motivation, making it in the millionaires club and the billionaires club. You want to get to that. There's a lot of that packaged stuff out there. But if you really look closely at the Elon Musks of the world and these people who have crazy amounts of wealth and success, don't you ever get a sense from them that they're talking to people who are perceiving them one way and they're looking at them back and saying, you don't really get it? Like, yeah, you think he said, like, Elon Musk once broke down. He's like, all this anti-billionaire BS, and he said, yeah, sure. So I own a percentage of Amazon, a percentage of Tesla, and that's kind of how it works. But I don't just have what you think I have. I don't have this life that, even though it looks that way.
Yeah.
I think what Elon has is a ridiculous amount of stress. That's what he really has.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about.
Managing an insane amount of business and companies, and like we think it's
Bruno
like this.
Mars has that too,
of course.
And I just think of him as like sitting at a piano, being like, but like he has this like enormous, massive like life,
right, to manage.
To manage, and like I wonder, and what does he invest in? Does he have like real estate? Does he have?
That's interesting.
Like a fund or something?
You're purely curious. I'm
just purely curious. Yeah, I'm not really like porning him of like he can do whatever he wants. I'm just like, but like not just him. A lot of these artists that we think of as sort of just like, oh, you're cool, you come on the radio and play a show. Like they have these massive spheres of influence in life, and probably tons of people trying to like, you know.
What I have heard does happen with accumulated wealth and prominence and success. That is true to some extent, is it becomes harder and harder to get to that person. In other words, there are more barriers to them.
Right.
Which becomes like a filtration system because Tim Dillon said to Joe Rogan, you have a lot of people now who want things from you. You know, you have this platform, people want things from you. He goes, yeah, I have 4 phones now.
Exactly. And he's like, you're in my iPhone.
Yeah, exactly. But he said you that's one thing that I've heard, just not personally, obviously, but people said you have to put these barriers in front of you a little bit. So sure, Bruno Mars, I'm sure, has assistants, managers, accountants, business managers, everybody specialized to do things, because you can't manage that kind of thing on your own. But there is a part of him, I can tell you, that is also sitting at the piano going dee 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 dee.
So you were an intern in the studio, and what did you say?
And so I mean, it starts from there. That and I would say is the Iron Man engine, the thing in his chest. For someone like Bruno Mars, that's driving the business, like that ability, that skill. That's at the core of it. And I always find it funny when I don't kid myself sometimes with certain relationships that I have where everyone's all friendly and nice. And I'm like, and I don't, and it's not disingenuous, but I'm also like, we're friendly and nice for a very particular reason. Like, you like a certain thing I've done. You know what I mean? Like, we met in that context, and we're like collegial and friends now. And there's relationships I have like that. But I know that, and it doesn't take away from it, but just as a matter of fact, it's not based on like childhood memories or bonding. It's based on the fact that you loved this song that I did, and it proved that I was competent in whatever or that our band did. Like, that's why that's how it came about.
So what does that have to do with the Iron Man heart?
That a lot of a lot of but my point is that a lot of the success is driven from a place of what he's able to do
not
talent
from the
wise.
admiration.
No, it's just driven from his abilities and talents.
Oh, I gotcha.
And then he applies that and puts it out there. The people around him and the empire he's built. I mean, he has his parents and his close friends and his close circles. And then there's everybody else. Like, what is it about Bruno Mars that's still driving it? It's that Iron Man thing I'm talking about is the fact that he can write a fucking hit.
So that's wild.
He can get in there and write a melody and you go, oh, that's awesome.
So compared to someone who's just been skimming off a penny from trillions of transactions with like corporate bonds, it's like,
well, maybe
it's
that person has an ability too to generate like.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They have an ability. You're taking it away from them because it
That's a
doesn't
good point.
emotionally move you.
That's a good
But
point.
that person has an ability too. Otherwise, why doesn't everybody just do that?
That's a good
Go
point.
make $1 billion doing a random actuarial transactional bullshit. It doesn't do anything for me emotionally, and I think the reason they get so demonized is because their motives are very clear. They're not trying to make something other than money. But it takes a lot of skill and ability and ethics to do it, work ethic to do it. So I'm just saying what's driving all of that is Bruno Mars' ability to sit at the piano and write a killer hook. And I don't, that doesn't, if anything, that's just to be clear.
Yeah.
You know, my point is, I was in the studio with him. I didn't understand. I didn't know who he was. He comes in with like a posse, like a group of people. His like one guy is his co-writer from this. I found out later, one of his like fellow co-writers who's written a lot of songs with him. One of his guys in the Smeezingtons was a Tenafly guy.
Smeezingtons?
Yeah, his writing group is called the Smeezingtons. They wrote like his first album, and like his producer, one of his producers that he works with, was a guy in a band I used to play like in high school with. We used to do shows together, and he was a Tenafly guy, and he would talk about it back in the day. Yeah, I'm working with this guy, Bruno Mars, is working on some tunes. It's just like any other artist, aspiring pop artist. The point is, he gets in there, I plug it all in, ready, set up to go, just an acoustic guitar, and I was just ready, hips record. I'll catch a grenade for you. I never even heard these songs. No one had. This was before the rollout. You know, he starts playing. Easy come, easy go. That's just how you live. And we're all like, everyone's heads just turn, pin drop. Undeniable. I was just like, and then I'll catch a grenade for you. That whole, everybody, his whole, it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like,
That's cool.
And I was like, I still have the recording somewhere. I have it on a drive. I have it on a hard drive somewhere. I have it somewhere.
That's really cool.
But I was like, it's on an old hard drive that I have to like. I
Do
don't
you
know.
technically, should you be getting paid for every time that's played?
No, I was just the recording assistant.
Oh.
But I looked over. He's playing his hits that were,
Yeah.
and I'm watching him play these songs. Today I don't feel like doing anything, and I'm just like, damn, this guy is something else. And then a week later, he explodes.
Oh, yeah.
A week later, I'm like, Bruno Mars, SNL. It's just, you know, like when you learn a new word, you start to see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I learned of a new artist.
Yeah.
He wasn't huge yet, but he was about to be. And I'm sure a lot of people knew that in his circles and labels and whatever. But he wasn't a household name yet. I went home. I was like, oh, yeah, I saw Bruno Mars. Who's that? I don't know. Some guy. I think he sings that song. Oh, I know that song. He's everywhere. The next week. And I was like, oh, that was cool.
So what did you walk away from that experience with?
That I suck. No, well, he was like, Bruno, nice to meet you. And he was like up to my shoulder.
Hi, Bruno, baby.
He was up to my shoulder. You know?
Was he really? Is he short?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that.
He's like 5. And he's very short.
Oh.
A lot of these guys are super short.
I
You'd
wouldn't
be
take
shocked.
$1 billion to be that short.
But what did I learn? My natural temperament is not, I don't get discouraged by insanely talented people.
No, that kind of experience,
I get
imagine, would
encouraged.
inspire
I was
you,
just
yeah.
like, man, that was awesome. What did I take away from it?
What I take away from it is that the guys, the stars are stars for a reason. They earn
yes,
it, you know?
that talent is rewarded.
Yeah.
Talent plus hard work is definitely
and also
rewarded.
I mean, like, we all have that undeniable talent part of ourselves, and to see that on display is like a really inspiring, beautiful thing. And you want to find it in yourself after that.
Artistically, it was interesting to hear a song stripped down, acoustic, before I heard the hit song on the radio. Because the next week or two, over the next months, it was all Bruno Mars everywhere. And I heard these songs all polished and produced. And maybe had I heard them, I would have been like, oh, it's a cool pop song. And it wouldn't have had the same impact as when I heard him just do it acoustic. I was like, that is an amazing song.
Oh, wow.
That's probably the biggest impact it had on me, because I was like, hits are hit. Not just talent is rewarded. Hits are hits for a reason. At that early stage in my career, I was like, pop hits are not to be discarded and ignored. There's a reason every pop song you hear And it definitely affected me years later as I began to write with the band, and we would sit down and you'd write at the piano or the guitar first. And the reason you would do that was if the song works there with very minimal production and nothing happening, if it works there and you're just singing it, you're like, okay, then anything we add to it will only enhance it. But oftentimes you throw in all this production and craziness, but the song itself is not, you know, it's like if the writing of the screenplay is amazing.
Yeah. No, I really.
You know, you put it into film, it's going to only enhance the words.
You know what it is? If you can't sit down and tell somebody the story, it's because the story sucks. It doesn't work.
Exactly. So the point is, what I learned from Bruno Mars in that moment, and then years later, again rediscovering it, is melody, lyric. That's the song, and I am a believer of that. And it kind of goes in waves. You hear a good groove, and sometimes it's an infectious bass line, but melody and lyric, that's the foundation. That's the song. That if I could just sing you something and you're like, oh man, you're in really good shape. Not to say you can't balance it. And of course you can hear vibe, and you can hear, not every lyric necessarily has to slay. There's stuff that just works for all sorts of reasons. But generally speaking, I learned a very important thing about lyric and songwriting, watching Bruno Mars, and then later doing it and watching how we work in the band and creating our own
really
records, melody and lyric. And don't be distracted by the other stuff until it's time to put that stuff in.
That's a beautiful message. Melody and lyric, don't be distracted by the other stuff.
It's all the melody and lyric. Buckle up, episode 18. That's a shitty melody. It's just a vamp, whatever. All right. That's a good one to wrap up on.
That was good. That was nice, man. Yeah, took a little break from politics. I like these conversations.
What about the N-word? Yes, it's nice to talk other stuff.
Free Rogan.
We are a song. We should encapsulate it all. A melody with the N-word and Rogan. Oh God. Anyway, a break from the heated political stuff. It was all on my mind last week, and I'm glad it's not, because I can like think about other things, and there are other things to talk about. And hopefully our friends who watch this and are fans of this will enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
That's Buckle Up episode 18, Michael. I got your grenade for ya.